So welcome to Wednesday night, to the Amazing Grace service. We are continuing, and we're almost at the very end of the Way of Mastery. I've really enjoyed this journey. I have to say personally, it has definitely transformed me. And I think it's done its goal, which is to bring us more into a state of 100% responsibility for that which we are creating. And not only from a fault-finding way, but from a space of love. And being in that space of allowing what is, resisting not, and understanding the power of love and the transformative power of love. And that's really what this journey is about. And he has spoken it in many different ways, just to kind of bring it home. And tonight we are talking, we're just beginning the third section of this, which is the way of knowing. We did the way of the heart, the first 12 chapters. We did the way of transformation, the middle 12, and now we're into the way of knowing. And tonight's topic, well, actually we're talking on lesson 26 and 27, it is you are as you were created to be, is number 25. I'm sorry, we're doing 25 and 26. As you are as you're created to be, and the second chapter is about allowing. And as I was going through here, first of all, I want to say that if you have the book, I really invite you to read chapter 25, because it probably is the best explanation ever that I've seen of that concept that we are God. And that is that's a hard one to put into perspective. But what it is really saying is from the standpoint that every single thing that unfolds, a lot of times when we call it negative things and we say, well, that's God, God's right there, that's it, God created it all, it's all God, and we'll look at the tough things in our life or the negative things in our life, and it's just hard to comprehend. How can that be? We know it's a loving God, a good God. But as been explained many times before, and the different analogies work, God is this principle of life, and every single path leads to the qualities of God. And God, the quality of God, when God is present, if you will, or the evidence of God, I love that word, the evidence of God is peace. So it doesn't matter what we've called into our experience. As I've talked about lately, my mantra really is these days, and I've been repeating it over and over, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. But the other part of that is I have created the perfect experience to take me to where I want to be. And that place to be is peace. The evidence of God, meaning that path that we took, all path leads to God, the evidence of that is peace. And no matter what happens in our life, no matter how horrible it feels or whatever happens, we end up at peace eventually. And so it's kind of like, we've used the analogy of electricity. Electricity can be used to shock you, or it can be used for light and so many wonderful things. Electricity is what it is, just as God is what it is. And so we have an infinite array of ways from which we walk the path of God. But it all ends up at peace. And it's already built into us. It's if we get so far off the path that we exhaust ourselves, that's one of the avenues that God uses, is that if you're really messing up and you're really stressing yourself out and you're really doing it bad, you just flat get exhausted, and that takes you to peace. Or surrender. Things happen and you just give up. That takes you to peace. We're already wired that way. We can try really hard to screw it up, but we're going to end up at peace sooner or later at the end of the path. And so all of it is creation, and we have the freedom to create in any way, shape, or form that we want. And so, and this chapter, as it talks about that we are God, that the vibration and the energy that we are is God, meaning that we're that peace, period. It doesn't matter what things we put in its way, we're ultimately that peace. And that's where we are. And that peace that we are, that soul that we are, doesn't require a body. And so it gets a little complicated to talk about it on a talk, but I highly recommend that you read it, because it did one of the best jobs of really explaining that we are peace. that we are God, and there's no separation. There's not God in me or any of that. That all that I am, every action that I am, every thought that I am, everything that I do is the evidence of God, is the activity. And it has a statement in there that really was powerful, and it talked about the mind. Because we use our thoughts, and sometimes our thoughts feel separate, but we use our thoughts, and our thoughts really can create the commotion, if you will. It creates the panic. If it's all going to lead to peace, then all of that drama that we put in each and every experience and activity wasn't necessary. It just was something we created. It was something that we created with energy and we focused on, but none of it was necessary. I remember a friend of mine's mother, who was in her late 80s, had said to me once, we had asked her, it was during the time of Oprah, when Oprah had that saying that said, "What do you know for sure?" And I had asked her that, well, you're sitting here at almost 90 years old. You've lived this life. You've watched an awful lot of things and gone through a lot of things. What do you know for sure? And that's exactly what she said, is that it always works out. Here she is sitting at 90, and she's thinking, wow, what if this happens? What if that happens? How many what ifs do we go through of bad things and no money and relationships breaking up and this, that, and the other? But if you really knew when you sat on the other side of it that it all works out, could we give up a little of the drama? Could we give up a little of the stirring up? Could we give up a little bit of panic? Could we give up a little bit of fear? Could we just give that up? In this philosophy, they call that faith. But the truth is that if the evidence of God is peace, if we know we're going to end up there, could we just go there first? That's the allowing. So we talked about on Sunday, on a couple Sundays ago, when I spoke about the series or the teaching, the ancient Hawaiian teaching, Ho'oponopono, which talks just about that. It's about unobstruction, that's who we are. It's unobstructed. When we actually arrive, and the way of knowing is about that, it's about unobstructed feelings and unobstructed activities. That's what the way of knowing is. Meaning that we just step into it and have that faith. We don't create the havoc that is around it as we go further down our spiritual path. And as we look at that, I use the example of Dr. Hugh Lin, who teaches a more modern Ho'oponopono. And I used the example on Sunday, if you weren't there, I had a piece of glass with a flashlight that was shining through it. And we are the piece of glass. That's exactly what we are. We're this transparency of God, and the flashlight is the light, or is God, that just shines right through the piece of glass. But what happens is, and we use the example of the fingers to put over it, what happens is that our data, or our memories, or our programming, it's almost like putting our hand in front of the flashlight, and it just creates an obstruction. But that obstruction is like a cloud. It doesn't have any power. If we give up our programming, or as they call it, our memories, if we clear that space out, then we become this unobstructed vessel of God. Excuse me. So to do that, in Ho'oponopono, it says we need to go to that place of compassion and forgiveness and trust and surrender. We need to step back in that allowing. In the way of mastery, it describes allowing as allowance requires the rescinding, the stepping back, slowly, patiently at times, painfully at times, but stepping back of every perception you have ever held of everyone and everything. The entire world that you have made in error must be brought to the surface of the mind for correction. So the spiritual journey just is about that, meaning if every single thing that is difficult or not working in our life simply is data that's in the way of our light, if that's all that it is, then the spiritual journey is about bringing up to the surface and looking at and shining the light on that truth and giving it its no power, its no resistance. The way of mastery in these 2 chapters was talking about it, and it's surrounding me now. It's that whole concept of resist nothing. That if we put our energy into the chaos and all of the stuff that's going, we're just adding to it and making it worse. But if we live our life literally leaning back from that stage and observing the activities and those thoughts just as what they are, is data that's coming in, that's on the other side of us, that's blocking the light. If we just use it as that and don't give it our energy, if we know the truth and we hold the light and we stay in that space of love and we know that it all works out anyways, and we know the evidence of God is peace, if we were to just go there first, then we could save ourselves a whole lot of havoc that we're creating in our lives. And so the evidence of God, that peaceful place in the state of allowance, as the Tao says, resist nothing. It's all God. All paths lead to God. So resist it. You don't have to get in and fight it. You don't have to get in and fix it and change it. Just observe it. Know that it's a perception. Know the nothingness of it. And let it just float on by. The Tao says it. Eckhart Tolle says it, be in the now. Byron Katie says it, resist no things. It's not an easy concept to get, but this book has been extremely helpful in that concept of how I just trust what is, allow what is, and step back from all of those challenges of the things that are. Resist nothing, just allow. I talked a little bit about on Sunday, and I want to bring it to your attention. I believe the bookstore has them in now. Michael Singer, Oprah, in her Super Soul Sunday, was talking about interviewing Michael Singer. And he wrote a book, An Untethered Soul. And it's a powerful book. I'm only into it about 3 chapters right now. And it's one more time, it's this subject. And I love the way that he describes it. He describes us, that we are God, our soul, this part that's not physical, that's us, is the observer that's watching all of the talking and all the words and all the thoughts and all the beliefs that are going on all the time. And the reason that we know that we're not all those thoughts and all those beliefs and all this stuff that's going on all the time, because we can see that it's happening. We're the one that's actually watching it. And the biggest challenge that we have that he talks about is that it doesn't shut up. It just talks and talks and talks and talks and goes and doesn't even really have much to say. It just goes constantly. The challenge is that we have made the misperception that that's who we are. We've forgotten that we're actually the one that's stepping back here watching it. We're not all those words and all those thoughts and all that stuff that's going on all the time. We're the one that is watching it. And he uses that, and a great example, the evidence of that, is that when you go into meditation, and you get in that really quiet place. We just did a workshop with Michael Fishman that was here on Friday night from the Art of Living with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, which is probably one of the most spiritual individuals that I've been around. When you're around him, you just feel it. He's very sacred. But and he teaches a meditation technique. But one of the things that they taught is that in meditation, when your breath slows down, so do your thoughts. And it's interesting. I've been practicing it. That when your breath slows down, your thoughts slow down. But somebody's noticing that. Your soul, your God, your essence, that oneness of life, that divine mind is noticing that you have no thought, or that your thought is less than. So if you can see or experience no thinking, then it just goes to show you you're not your thoughts. And you're not all of that stuff that's happening all the time. And so then, therefore, you are that path, that way of mastery was talking about. You are that essence, that divine, that God, that untouchable, that place that's peace and that's perfect right action, that place that Ho'oponopono says it's inspiration. It's in that place of quiet. It's in that place of stepping back, not that busyness and that fixing stuff, but it's in that place that we get inspiration, which is the activity of God, not our own limited beliefs and fixing and solving and solutions, but the activity of God. It's an inspiration that comes through that has its own power, that does the work for us, that does it perfectly and in right action. And so this whole concept that God is I am, that God is this energy, this volition, this soul, this intelligence, this peace that I am, that is right inside here, that we mistakenly think that the activity is us. When we start knowing that and living and trusting what that is, then we start living a completely transformed life. We live a completely different life. That's where the spiritual path is trying to take us. That's kind of advanced, difficult things to comprehend. But it's truly who we are. He talks about that why do we have then that busy mind and all of that stuff that's going on all the time? And we have it for a couple of reasons. Number one is it allows us it narrates us the world. It tells us kind of what's going on. It does a narrating for us. The other thing that it does is that it allows us to control, with all this information that's happening around here, this busy talking and all these words that are going on, allows us to control our world. And in a world that feels somewhat controlled, we feel secure. And the last thing that it said, which I thought was good too, is it releases energy. He used the example of like a teapot. The reason that all that talking and all that chattering goes on, and I know that you've experienced it yourself, is because just like a teapot, when the energy gets too high, it blows its whistle. Think about it. Have you ever been in an argument or a fight or something's happened and the chatter in your head's just going blah, 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 and I'm going to tell him this and this and that, and I should have done this, blah, 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 and it's just going 100 miles an hour. One of the purposes of all of that stuff is just to release energy, to get rid of it. The Eckhart Tolle uses an example of two ducks in his book, A New Earth. Two ducks that are in a pond. They're just peacefully swimming along, and one duck pisses the other duck off, and they get into this fight, and they're just screaming at each other. And then they separate. They're done. And the both of the ducks go in their own direction, and they shake their whole body just to release all of the energy. And then they just paddle along. They're just done. They're just complete with it. If we can really understand our own mind and how this works, if we can step back as the observer, if we could watch the thoughts, watch the activity of the minds, and watch all of those kinds of things, and disassociate ourselves with them. Meaning that we don't have to go in and fix the problems. The problems that are being fixed from that chatterbox mind are not helping anything. I want to share with you some of the tidbits that they had there. He said, the real problems are not life itself. It is the commotion the mind makes about life. That is where the real cause of problem is. It's all that busy talk. It says the I inside will never be content, that chatterbox. It always has a problem. Have you thought about that? It always has a problem. The instant you solve one, it finds another one. There's always something to be solved, something to figure out, something to fix from that I inside. You never have to fix a problem. You simply change your perception. So this book, this is what it looks like, The Untethered Soul with Michael Singer. Like I said, I think we have it in the bookstore now, and if not, it's on Amazon. But it talks about, it literally is taking us on that journey to just step back, to really eliminate large quantities of chaos, large quantities of thinking and solving and literally getting in the flow of God through what Way of Mastery talks about: resist not, allow, and surrender, meaning that it's all unfolding perfectly, which is all spiritual paths talk about. Trust, surrender. Ho'oponopono talks about step into love. And it talks about compassion for who and where you are and what you're doing. And just having a space of an open heart. And so I invite you to pick up that book and The Way of Mastery, the Ho'oponopono, because I'm really finding that it is through that aspect of love, it's through that aspect of open heart, it's through that aspect of not buying the outside world, but having this be an inside job, and knowing that, as The Way of Mastery said, there's infinite perspectives that we can choose. And by knowing that we are at choice and all of those things, we settle into peace. And truly, that's the only thing we're ever looking for, is peace. And peace is the evidence. I love that definition. Peace is the evidence of God as me. Peace is the evidence. So let us turn within as we take these words into that place of love and into our heart. As I recognize that one power and presence, that power and presence is peace. I can feel it right here and now. Knowing that it is always there and always available, and as I step out of the chatter, as I disassociate and watch and observe all the chatter and the busyness and the releasing of the energy and the controlling of the world for security purposes, and I step into that place of trust and knowing, of peace and God, of knowing that it always works out, knowing that every path leads me to where I'm wanting to go, that I've created perfect experiences in life to know peace, to know God, to know love. It's with this kind of a deep trust, a deep sense of knowing, a deep understanding of the soul, of the who and what we are, that I have great compassion. And so I have, with a heart that is grateful for this truth, I simply say, thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. The busyness of our thoughts and all of that stuff that we're seeing that's in the outside world. And we move into our soul. We move into that God aspect of ourselves. We move into that place that is untouchable, that is already peace and is already knowingness and already intelligence and wisdom and guidance and healing and wholeness. For it is there. It's already there. It is that part that animates this physical body, but is that eternal aspect of the eternal part of us that this physical world cannot touch. It cannot interfere. For it is God. For God is and I am. It is who and what each of us are made of. It is every name spoken here tonight, all of us and all those that walk this planet. For all paths lead to God. For all paths lead to peace. And so I know for each and every one of us that the step and the steps that we take lead us to that perfect place. That all that we are creating in our life, every experience is absolutely perfect to take us to that place of peace and love and truth and wisdom and wholeness and abundance in God. And so I shift my perception to see the entire world completely differently. I shift my perception to see the experiences and the events and unfoldment completely differently. For it is in that shift of perception, knowing that it is the perception that we put on things that give it its value. And as we open, surrender, and allow and shift perception, we step into that truth and that allness that is God. And so I just know that for each and every one of us, that each and every step is guided and led, and that we are held and whole always. And so it is. Amen. May you always feel the embrace of God. May your life reflect wholeness and health and abundance. May your heart radiate with love and light. And may you know that your every step is guarded and guided. And may you feel, sense, and know God's amazing grace. For it is in, through, and as us always, and in always. God bless you all. Go forth in peace. Good night. Thank you for being here.